So, Happy New Year. Welcome back to Forest Talk, where we talk story about the plants and the animals and the connections we have in our native ʻŌhiʻa forests. Did you know wetland birds like nēnē, koloa, maoli can be found in our ʻŌhiʻa forests? And for that matter, did you know wetlands can be found in high elevation forest habitats? The title of this talk today is Wetland Birds Love ʻŌhiʻa Forests Too, and our guest speaker is Helen Raine. Before Helen presents, I'm going to do my usual requests and announcements. As most of you know, I am Kim Rogers. I'm the outreach coordinator at Kauai Invasive Species Committee. My focus is ʻŌhiʻa and protecting our native forest ecosystems from rapid ʻŌhiʻa death and other forest threats. Remember always that a healthy ʻŌhiʻa forest helps prevent erosion, ensure we have healthy ocean reefs in which to swim, surf, snorkel, fish, and whatever else we like to do down there along the coast. And a healthy ʻŌhiʻa forest helps ensure we have fresh water to drink. Unfortunately, rapid ʻŌhiʻa death threatens our forests. To help stop the potential spread, we do ask that before and after you enter the forest, to hike, to go birding, whatever it is you're doing, please be sure to practice biosanitation protocols. Simply, step one, brush as much mud off yourself, your footwear, your gear as possible. Step two then is to spray with isopropyl rubbing alcohol, which will actually kill the microscopic fungal pathogen that spreads in mud and moves its way around the island in mud. Also today, as we move forward, as we always do, please follow good Zoom etiquette. If you're not already muted, please make sure you are muted. If you have questions, drop them in the Q&A, which is an icon at the bottom of your screen if you're on a laptop. If you cannot find it, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I'm going to be adding links in the chat, and so watch for those. Also, like I mentioned at the end of the week, I'll be sending out a link to this recording. So if you have to leave early, look for that and feel free to share it with friends. Um, I'm particularly excited and happy to share that next month, our forest talk is going to be about ʻŌhiʻa specifically. And the title of the talk is Back Off Beetles: How Repelling Ambrosia Beetles Help Protect ʻŌhiʻa Forests. Our guest will be Dr. Kyle Roy. Dr. Roy is a forest entomologist over on Hawaii Island. She's been doing science trying to understand this disease since almost the very first trees were reported dying suddenly in the Puna district of Hawaii Island. I'm going to drop the link for you to sign up for that. The date is February 11th. I'll drop the link in a minute in the chat. But also, I want to share, I'm super excited that Helen has agreed to join us on Friday, January 30th in the afternoon, starting at 1 o'clock. At a wetland on the west side of Kauai, Kawaii Bird Sanctuary. And we're going to do, that's going to be, introduction. And if you haven't been to that wetland, Jason Vercelli from DOFA is going to join us as well and talk about the work that's been done out there, the restoration. Helen will talk about Alaiula. And then it's part of our forest journaling session and season and series that we've been doing the last couple of years. All of those links I'm going to put in the chat in a second. But I've been talking plenty now, so let's get to Helen. Um, Helen Raine is the Hawaii Conservation Coordinator for Pacific Birds Habitat Joint Venture, and she focuses on the protection and restoration of wetlands and water birds. She is based here on Kauai, but works across the state, building local partnerships to tackle wetland conservation challenges and connecting partners with the resources and funding they need to carry out effective conservation work. Helen has worked in natural resource management for over 20 years and has a Master of Science in Conservation from University College London. And so with that, won't you all join me in welcoming Helen to our very first talk of 2026. And I'm going to turn it over to you now, Helen. Welcome.
Morning, everybody. It is to be here, kicking off the ʻŌhiʻa Love series in 2026. And it's a great opportunity for us because we can all get a little bit siloed in our, I'm doing birds and you're doing trees. And I love how Kim makes it expansive and includes us all because it is going to be a massive joint effort to kind of do restoration at the level we need to protect both the forest and the birds that are my particular love. So I have a presentation to share with you today. Let's see. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that.
Yep, it's good. Thank you.
Looking good. Okay, and this beautiful artwork was done by Tillel, just capturing some of our native water birds and migratory birds. We've got the alai keo keo over there and the koloa maoli. The ulili or one tatler sat on the ʻŌhiʻa fish pond. So just a really quick intro to Pacific birds. We, as an organization, we're a nonprofit and we have a genuinely gigantic geography from Alaska to Northern California and in theory, all of the Pacific Islands, but we're a team of 5 people. So we are very focused on very particular habitats in that giant geography. So I work exclusively on wetlands and water birds across the state. And we try and kind of amplify what one person can do by creating partnerships. So that is how joint ventures work across the country. And there are lots of joint ventures exactly like ours nationwide, build partnerships. So we have a partnership here on Kauai, the Kauai Wetland Partnership. We have the Molokai Wetland Partnership. And, we're already thinking about partnership number 3. And this is just an example of some of the habitats that we work in. So just to move this little bar here. So I'm working on wetlands, I'm thinking about water birds, but the reality is that wetlands rely really heavily on healthy forested sheds, and ʻŌhiʻa forest being particularly important in that. And the reason for that is all those kind of ecosystem freebies that forests give us allow wetlands to give then all of their free ecosystem advantages. So a really healthy, happy ʻŌhiʻa forest, as I'm sure Kim is doing all sorts of things.
Helen, sorry to interrupt.
All right. Yeah, so the forest is capturing all the water. It's filtering out the sediments. It's hanging onto the soil, and it's recycling nutrients. So it's doing all the things that we need to happen in uplands so that our wetlands are not overwhelmed in the lowlands. And that is what this looks like, basically. You need to use your imagination and just imagine your beautiful ʻŌhiʻa forest at the top of this hill. I guess I could have graphically designed a few, but kind of have them in your mind's eye. They're doing all their foresty things, and then the wetlands are doing very similar things as the secondary line of defense. So when we get those giant rain bombs, forest does its best. And then whatever sediment has gone down, the wetlands then try and settle out, and we get improvements to our reef, we get better water quality, we get groundwater recharge, and we get fantastic habitat for our birds. And this is what that looks like in Hawaii. So this is Hanalei National Wildlife Refuge. You've got all those gorgeous lo'i, which support lots of birds. Your forests in the background. You can't see this, but the refuge also has huge wetland management units. And the net result is lots of happy babies like these ʻŌhiʻa. And of course, the wetlands are giving us lots of additional benefits like bird and insect habitats. So they really do form the base of the food web. And both the forest and the wetlands capturing carbon, which is obviously extremely important in this time of climate change. So the trees and the vegetation are fixing the atmospheric carbon through photosynthesis. And when they die, that carbon is trapped and the acidity slows down decomposition, so we get less carbon released into the environment. Oops, my mouse has gone to sleep. So the trouble comes when things aren't going terribly well in the uplands, where we've got invasive species creeping in, or we've got damage from pigs, or we've got a disease like rapid ʻŌhiʻa death, and we're losing our trees. Those problems in the forested uplands translate very quickly to problems in the lowlands because the wetlands can only do so much. They get overwhelmed if the forest hasn't kind of done its job first in big rain. So the two are intimately connected and linked, and basically our wetlands can't thrive without our ʻŌhiʻa forest. The classic example again being Hanalei. So we had the rain bomb in 2018, and I talked to Andy Hood. He's a hydrologist who's working with the Hanalei watershed ʻŌhiʻa, and he said he went to a conference after the flood, and the other hydrologists would not believe the rain gauge result he was giving. They just said it wasn't impossible. It wasn't that much water that quickly, but you know, we saw the results of it. It happened, huge amount of water, and that was an example where the forest couldn't cope, the wetlands couldn't cope, and we ended up with huge flooding event. Conversely, challenges in the forest and the wetlands can also lead to drought because you don't get that water percolating back into the groundwater. So whether it's raining hard or not raining at all, we need all the functioning. So I just wanted to chat a little bit about all of the water birds we have because they're all wonderful, and if they don't always use upland forest habitat. We have 4 endangered water birds and a threatened goose on the islands. They're found nowhere else in the world. They're all actually phenomenal success stories. Most of these birds were down to small numbers, 50 to 100 birds in the 1950s. They've been doing well. They've been on the rise about 2016, but unfortunately we have seen a decline again. And the koloa is really only found on Kauai now, with some small populations in Oahu, lost from all the other islands. And the ʻŌhiʻa, the Hawaiian gallinule, that's the one at the bottom with the bright red frontal shield, it's been lost from all of the islands except Kauai and Oahu. Great success story, but still some challenges ahead. Whoops. And when you're down to numbers, you've got to be sensitive because we're constantly about how every day, but these are really populations. Every bird genuinely does count, and we need to do what we can. And we'll talk later about what each individual can do for these birds. As you can see, the last population estimate in 2016 was looking not too bad, and USGS's population estimate completed in 2024 shows those declines. Obviously, that's strongly connected with the fact that we've lost large amounts of our wetland habitat, between 44 and 65% in coastal areas. So no surprise there. And in addition to that, we've lost vast amounts of lo'i. You know, the Hawaiians were masters and are masters of managing water for indigenous agriculture. Have declined with the water. My mouse is a little sleepy. There we go. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about Hanalei as well, because that's always been the powerhouse of water bird protection across the islands. It remains the most important site, but as you can see, Hanalei is suffering from these water bird declines, and they are really struggling with their management. The league is lack of capacity and management.
Well, hey, hate to do it, but yeah, breaking up again. One
Breaking
thought
up.
might be to turn your video off, Maybe that would use less internet.
Yeah, let's try that. And if it doesn't work, I can try phoning in, and I'll just keep the computer running at the same time. Let's see if the video helps.
Okay, let's give it a try.
Okay, how's that? Does that sound better? Look
It
better?
sounds good for now. Let's keep going.
Feel free to interrupt me if because it's no use if yeah, so what we're looking at is challenges at the refuge, leading to, correspondingly low numbers of water birds. And there's challenges across the state. It's not all the decline of the water birds, not all down to handling line, but it is there's a part of it. So last year, Pacific Birds wrote our strategic plan for Hawaii wetlands, and I should have put a QR code in, but you can find this at pacificbirds.org. It's pretty easy to find. As part of that, we asked managers across the state what they thought the greatest threats were at each site that they managed. Unsurprisingly, they came up with predators as the number one by quite a long chalk, and then challenges with habitat management and habitat loss. The good news about that is we know how to fix this. This is not some intractable, enormous problem and we don't know where to start. We just need to figure out how to get the wet leakers on the ground to offset these losses. And so we know how to do it. We just need to kind of do better, basically. So now thinking about those that really make connection for us between the lowlands and the forest areas. Perhaps number one is the koloa. Super cool bird. It is its own species. They are found nowhere else in the world. And it's the only endemic duck still in the main Hawaiian Islands. The Laysan duck across all of the islands, but it's been lost and is only on Laysan. And these ducks feature in Hawaiian mo'olelo. They were very familiar to the Hawaiians. They were there as the lo'i were expanding. The Hawaiians were great duck habitats. They were there controlling insect snails and also providing a food source. And they were also building the island right from the beginning. They were transferring seeds and nutrients from the wetlands, the bogs, and the lowland up to the highlands in the same way that seabirds do. So our petrels and New waters, they also bring lower. And just a quick chart, which this is courtesy of wildlife, I thought it was a great explanation of where the koloa maoli came from. It was originally a hybrid between the Laysan duck and wild North American mallard, created this Hawaiian duck that evolved on its own. And then domestic mallards were brought in the 1800s. They rapidly started breeding with the Hawaiian duck, and so the Hawaiian duck was lost from all of the islands except Kauai. My understanding is that Dofor did some pretty hard work getting rid of mallards on Kauai. So that helped later on. And we always have mallard coming through the islands. They're migratory. But of course, when they're migrating, they're not breeding. They're not, the odd one might hang around to breed, but really speaking, they are migratory birds. So they just weren't there in the breeding season until humans brought these domesticated versions. And there's a lot of really interesting genetics going on by Wells and Lavretsky on that. They are helping to drive the process of undoing this hybridization. So there's the Laysan duck, American mallard, the koloa maoli, and the domestic mallard. So this is a representation, again, combination of work by Wells on behalf of Fish and Wildlife, which shows the genetic composition of birds across the island. So the yellow is koloa genetics, looking pretty good in Kauai. And then as you get into Oahu, you can see things start going a bit wrong. And then in the other islands, those birds pretty much full on hybrids. And that little box there shows James Campbell National Wildlife Refuge. That's important because it is still looking pretty reasonable. So the koloa that are there are still pretty koloa-like, and that is where they do a reintroduction. So the plan is to try and genetically restore the population. And to do that, they're going to apply optimized strategies to reverse genetic ancestry of the hybrids. And I think in layperson's terms and the way I kind of understand it in my head, they're going to flood the gene pool in a targeted way with Koloa genetics, kind of turn around that hybridization. The birds are coming from Hanalei National Wildlife Refuge. This project is already underway and they had a go at catching some last year. And then they'll be coming to James Campbell. And James Campbell are just killing it at the minute. They have an almost complete predator. So this red line is the outline of their entire refuge. ʻŌhiʻa is their core unit. They have this green ungulate fence, and then they are doing a complete proof fence, or what they're calling their mammalian exclusion, because obviously we do aerial predators and a predator control program. So that's fighting work underway. So that's what's happening to try and protect the koloa. I wanted to go back in time a little bit to some research by Chris Malachowski on koloa habitat use, because he tagged koloa using satellite telemetry, these 12-gram solar-powered sat tags on backpack harness to see what the birds were getting up to. This kind of work is always so difficult to get any kind of data. Is always a bit of a miracle. If the tags fail, they fall off, they don't transmit. There's always some kind of huge technical problem. So the numbers are usually small, but he did find interesting information. So he's got one bird here moving from Hanalei up into mid-level highlands. He had a bird go to knee, so pretty big movement. And what he found, and this is a combination of Chris's work and some additional research, he found we were using upland stream systems, river corridors, and forested stream banks up to about 1,200 meters. Just to add to that, when I was volunteering for the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project, in their forest areas, I did see koloa relatively regularly. This was way before I started working on water birds and, didn't record them. It's just like, oh, there's a koloa. And now I'm like, damn, I should have noted those down. And I think that's a pretty common experience that researchers in forest bird areas are seeing koloa in stream areas. Nests have been found in upland areas, and Chris had 5 out of 6 of his nests and 2 out of 3 of inferred nests from behavior in forests. So when he says forest here, he's talking about the outskirts of Hanalei, but it just is an indicator that they're using forests to breed and upland forests to breed and forage. With his tagging, 3 birds had location in the Alakai region, in the Alakai swamp area. They had poor accuracy, but people have seen them with their eyes, so we already know it's happening and confirming it. And then he had tagged birds detected in the North Shore, in the mid to upper Hanalei and High rivers. So this piece of research by Chris pinned down some of the answers to what koloa are doing. And then Justin Haidt, Kelly Crampton, and myself had a look at some of the data for eBird and also some of the data that Callie and Justin's teams had been collecting. And the round dots are koloa eBird observations, and the orange dots are koloa, and the grey dots are nēnē. This was over a 5-year period. So considering that this is just eBird reports, a pretty large amount of data. And then this is specific KFBRP data where they had nēnē sightings and koloa sightings in the Alakai swamp area. And just going back here, I forgot to mention there were koloa nests as well. So Justin recorded some koloa nests up there in the swamp. So they are using this habitat extensively. As Kim said, those are a huge wetland up in the forested area, so perfect for ducks. Nēnē obviously use uplands too. It's one of my favorite things. Do quite a lot of work near the airplane trail on the edge of the Kalalau Valley. We have a predator-proof seabird fence up there, wearing my other R hat. And it's one of the best things to just see nēnē cruising up the Kalalau Valley and just kind of landing on that top part there, and looking for resources, food in that area. So definitely very present up there. And, that was one of the nēnē's great strengths, and that's what led them to survive when there were all of these other ducks, which disappeared. Ducks and geese, these disappeared over time because they became flightless, and the nēnē did not. It retained its ability to fly, and it continues to use that to make the connection between lowland habitat and upland habitat. And I heard people say that that is seasonal. I haven't found any sort of hard research on that they're going to the uplands at particular times. But they do become flightless in the lowlands. They molt after they've had their goslings. And so maybe once they get their feathers back, they're like, whoa, let's head up. So the nēnē have a population estimate of just under 4,000 birds. Again, phenomenal success story, but they are not out of the woods at all. And they suffer from all the same threats as the other birds. They may very well be nesting up in the highland areas as well. They need predator control. They need great habitat management, things that the other birds need to survive. They have another very big challenge, and I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to this project while I've got you all. This is a new project in the Manar Plains area. It was spearheaded by PMRF and by DOFOR because they noticed really large numbers of nēnē being killed on the road. Mark is managing a project to try and understand how many nēnē are dying in this area, and work with a partnership of stakeholders in that area to think about how we can reduce that. And the numbers are pretty staggering. The project started in October, and we already observed 40 dead nēnē on a stretch of road, which runs from just after PMRF to just before the shrimp area. So that's when there's 4,000 in the world, 40 dead in a 4-month period on one stretch of road is a big number. And we're really grateful that the partners are super engaged and interested in figuring out how we deal with a pretty challenging problem. So stay tuned on that one. If you want more information, there's a lot of info on our webpage, and we have this flyer, which I won't go through in detail, but you can download that. If you do find dead nēnē there, or in fact anywhere else, Anna before wants to know about them. So please do call her and let her know if you see dead nēnē. She wants the corpses, and she wants the location, and she's also the person responsible for injured nēnē and getting those to SOS. So we talked a little bit about the Alakai. We have some compelling evidence about how important that is, nēnē and koloa maoli. And obviously that's a huge, expansive bog. But TNC are also managing Kanaele bog, which is a smaller bog I haven't actually been to this one, but it looks absolutely beautiful in the photos. They're managing this bog, and Mele sent me these super cool prints and pictures from their trail cams. So we spent a bit of time trying to figure out who's up in your bog and what are they doing. So we identified these two Auku'u, black night heron. There's some koloa prints in there. There's obviously a kolea because you can see it in the bottom here. And then we suspected that there were probably also some ulili prints up here. So just another example of how wetland birds are really extensively using these upland wet habitats, and we should think about these within the context of our wetland management strategy and recovery for water birds. And again, highlighting the importance of the ʻŌhiʻa because both of these bogs are surrounded by expansive ʻŌhiʻa. And then while I've got everybody, I cannot really pretend that the ʻAlaiʻula are a super foresty bird, although they do use riparian corridors. So if you have a steeply rising watershed, you're going to get ʻAlaiʻula potentially getting into forested areas. They do really like fresh water though, like marshes. But I just wanted to mention them because the Forestry and Wildlife is running a campaign this year called the Year of Our Coastal ʻŌhiʻa. Um, and so we are running a parallel campaign focusing particularly on this coastal and wetland bird, the ʻAlaiʻula. And I wanted to just let everybody know about that because there's going to be some fun things happening. So here's a few images of our ʻAlaiʻula. Again, another super culturally important bird, and it has some of the best mo'olelo. The idea is that the ʻAlaiʻula stole fire from the god Maui to give to humans when they first arrived on the islands and they were starving and cold and hungry. And Maui branded the bird in revenge for that theft, which gave it this red frontal shield. And so DOFO launched their campaign on Monday. In fact, this is some of the pictures from that event. We kind of went to kick off our ʻAlaiʻula outreach campaign at the same time. So it's a really beautiful event. I really enjoyed it. He was like hanging out with enormous stuffed nēnē, and it was a great start to the campaign. So stay tuned for that. We have a lot of fun things coming. These are our two competition winners. We asked the middle and high school students across the state to create a piece of art around ʻAlaiʻula, and it had to have a Hawaiian cultural component. These were our two winners, and I just love them. So it's so hard to choose. Supposed to have one winner. We ended up with two because we just couldn't choose. So that this artwork will be helping get the word out about ʻAlaiʻula. And then we have a whole bunch of communication materials, and the Hawaii Audubon Society are going to be helping us to get to schools and to get it out to the public and just kind of make people aware of the ʻAlaiʻula. A lot of people, they might see it, but they don't know how rare and special it is, or that we as a bigger community are part of recovery. And then the last thing I wanted to chat about is relevant for both forest and lowland habitats if we want to protect our native wildlife. And that's the idea that cats belong indoors. So Hanalei National Wildlife Refuge, despite having top quality staff and really good predator control, they still lose a lot of birds to feral cats. So a 4-year period, 100 ʻAlaiʻula were lost to cats specifically. So we want to really encourage people to keep their cats indoors and to work with humane societies and cat advocacy groups to share that message as well. All agree cats belong indoors, it's better for them, it's better for the wildlife, it's better for human health. But there's still a lot to do. So there will be legislation coming out this year, so people can keep an eye out for that and just kind of messaging with your friends because this does make a big difference if we can reduce the number of cats on the landscape. And then here's what all of us can do. Keep cats indoors, keep dogs on a leash, support bills that aim to control feral cat populations, and then volunteer at your local wetlands. The Division of Forestry and Wildlife Wetland, Kavaeli, lowlands in Mana. That's open 24 hours a day, and there are regular work groups, so you can contact me if you like to do those. Um, and that's a great way to connect with birds and learn a lot from Jason Ficelli. And as Kim said, we'll be kicking off one of those with a kind of learn more about birds and do some journaling in that absolutely beautiful location. So I think that is it. This is our website, lots more information on there, and you can sign up for our newsletter.
Fabulous. Thank you, Helen. And I invite everybody to find where is the reaction button on the bottom of your screen and, give some applause, thank you, or hearts, or I wish there was a bird icon, a little bird emoji. Wouldn't that be fun? Hmm, darn. Oh, great. Now we got it going. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. And thank you, everybody, for bearing with us as we worked through our technical issues, and Helen for hanging in there too and persevering because we figured it out. It was much better. So thank you for that. We do have a couple questions. And of course, I always have lots of questions, but let's see where I'm scrolling back up. Bill P asks, does anyone know what are the origins of the Laysan duck?
My understanding is that that is also a descendant of the mallard. But yes, that was missing on the chart, but I think that's what it is. It evolved from migratory mallards.
And that one, at one time, the Laysan was once across the main Hawaiian Islands as well. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, it was, and it was lost. I'm not sure whether it was lost before or after human arrival, but yes, eventually retreated just to Laysan.
Which
But I
is
mean,
astonishing to me that it survived on Laysan, considering all the devastation that Laysan experienced, in the late 1800s with a bunch of crazy stuff happening out there and the loss of habitat and vegetation. So it's amazing they survived there and not here, but yeah, amazing. Anybody else, if you have questions, drop them in the chat and or the Q&A. I have a couple more questions if you have time, Helen. Okay, she's nodding her head. Um, when you were talking early on about, a lot of water birds, ducks included, migrate. What's the thinking on why, I mean, obviously there's a big distance, but what's the thinking on why our koloa as well as Laysan do not migrate anymore? Do you have thoughts on that?
yeah, I think it's just that the conditions are pretty awesome year round. So that migratory impulse is really strong. So you are going to migrate, even if, as it turns out, if you'd stayed, you would have been fine. I think that is sort of hardwired into those birds. But as that evolution happened and they became separate species, there was kind of no need to migrate anymore. You were hanging out and you did perfectly fine. So I guess the first pair were like, well, we'll try breeding. And we see that occasionally, you get the odd species that will stop over and have a crack at breeding. But yeah, I think it was just they had it good here, so they stayed put.
I know. I think we're all waiting for the snow goose to find a mate and maybe start breeding here. And then what's the other one that we have? It's another goose. It's escaping. We see it at Kilauea Point
The
often.
cackling.
The cackling goose, right. And in fact, I remember once it had at least one of them, one individual has been banded, and I was able to get the Fed number off of it, and that took like 85, I'm not kidding, photographs because with my long lens, because it's a long number that wraps around the leg. And so I was able to piece it all together. And at the time, this was years ago, looked it up and it had been banded by, I want to say, Brenda Zahn, who was one of our previous biologists at the refuge there. And it was, 10 or 15 years old. So, and coming back year after year after year. And that's one of those too. It's like, it's an education in real time on how uh, evolution works and, how things even survived here, right? Like how koloa maoli, their predecessors, the original ones, got here and survived to put out a population that expanded and then has, deflated basically. Anyway, I find that fascinating. Um, Bill P is asking, should we be concerned about weeds and rod being spread on the feet and plumage of upland wetland birds? Um, I'll tackle that one, Helen. Give you a break. So not wetland birds, or really any birds. There has been a little bit of science that looked into this as far as with forest birds, that are like using their little feet to hang on to tree branches. And because the fungus that leads to Rapidohia death, it is inside the tree that flows up and down in the waterway of the tree, so the vascular system of the tree. That's pretty hard for those little claws to penetrate. But at the same time, that the fungal pathogen obviously escapes the tree at some point or can in order to infect other trees. And that is potentially known and moves around the island in mud or what we call frass, which is the beetle excrement. And there's been no evidence of that spread happening associated with birds. Could it? Sure, possibly, but the percentage is just so minuscule. There are bigger issues of animals that are potentially spreading rod on their bodies and or through wounding trees, because that is the second mechanism of how a tree becomes infected. It has to have an open wound for that microscopic fungal pathogen to penetrate. So as long as a tree is healthy, it's not going to get injured. It's not going to get rod. Pigs and other feral ungulates have been shown to be extremely detrimental in the spread of rod. And especially when I refer to this, I'm mostly referring to the science that takes place on Hawaii Island because they've had over 1 million trees, ʻŌhiʻa, die of Rapidohia death. So they have a much bigger data set to work from than we do here, thankfully. And that leads into next month, our forest talk is going to be Dr. Kyle Roy, and she's going to be talking about how we have this wonderful new management option to help slow and stop the spread of Rapidohia death, and it's through a beetle repellent. So she's going to talk more about that. I put the link in the chat up higher if you want to sign up for that. I'll also be sending it out via the newsletter that I regularly send out, so you can sign up one of those two ways. That is probably a much longer answer than anybody wanted to hear, but there it is. You got me talking. And that's what I do. I do want to ask a couple more quick questions of Helen. You mentioned eBird, and I know that I'm assuming the vast majority of us on this call are familiar with eBird, but will you just, for those who might be new to birding and this eBird, what is it? Will you describe what it is? And then also, will you talk about, is there a way for anybody to visually identify mallard female versus koloa maoli? Two questions for you.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked those. Those are good questions. So eBird, yes, such a powerful tool, and it's right there on your phone. So if you are not familiar with it, download it. There is a Hawaii pack that you also need to download. And my colleague Mike has just put together a sort of little instruction thing on how to download eBird and how to get the Hawaii pack. And I think he recorded a video as well. I think we haven't got that up on our website yet, but I'll put my email in the chat. And whoops, I've got the underscore.
And you know what else, Helen, if it's readily available, if you want to send it to me, I can include it in the email that I will send out to everybody who registered. And we
Oh,
had,
perfect.
we have 20 some people on the call today, but there were 3 times that registered because people have conflicts, and so I always send the recording. So I can include that link. I think that would be a great link to include in my email.
Yeah, that would be wonderful because it is really useful. We're trying to encourage as many people as we can while you're out there doing your shopping or whatever, and you see Io the stilt at the Safeway field, record them. Like if you are in the, Alvai and you're crossing the bridge and you see an ala'iula, record it because we just don't have a lot of information outside of the very standard biannual waterbird counts by the state, which they could possibly count all the birds. It's one day in all the wetlands.
Right.
So yes, do that. It would be a huge help. And
So
particularly for those upland birds, we hardly know anything. We've got that tiny set of data and that's it.
I
So
love
you
it.
can reach out with that.
I
But
love
yeah,
it. Yes, that would be great to get more of those sightings in the forest.
yeah,
eBird, I mean, I can't say enough about it. I am not the most dedicated user. I'm going to do better thanks to Helen's encouragement. But it is one of the largest worldwide citizen science, if you want to call it, projects in the world. And
yeah,
you can tell, some of our scientists actually use the data. Helen referred to Callie from our Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project, who she has sourced the data. I mean, so it's excellent, and everybody can help and participate in that way too. Okay, the second question, the difference between mallard versus koloa maoli.
it's really hard. Basically, I mean, it used to be thinking about the males first. If it had a green head, it was definitely a mallard, not a koloa. But some of the recent evidence suggests there is a little bit of green headiness, and you could still be a purebred koloa, more or less. And then it was, curly tail feathers. Well, again, it seems like the koloa also have those. I think what we've come down to is if you are seeing small brown ducks, they are a little bit smaller than mallards. If you're seeing small brown ducks on Kauai, you can probably assume it's a koloa because we have something like 95% purity, at least on the sites they've surveyed. If it's anywhere else on all the other islands, it's probably a hybrid. So that is kind of the best I can do. There are keys, but Fish and Wildlife has pretty much stopped using them. They felt like they weren't super reliable. Um, so yeah, it's a challenge for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I just on Kauai assume they're purebreds, unless you
Yep.
obviously see a male mallard who has that fluorescent green head. Um, let's see, Bill. I often think, how far could the cute little extinct blind duck fly before it collided with something? Hmm,
I think it had lost the ability to fly
I think
and had
so. Yeah.
become, an under sort of like a moly underground type duck. So I guess it figured it out that way.
I mean, but they don't just go from flying one day to not flying the next. So obviously there's a transition period.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
It's like
I
the
think
big eye, no eye spider that was in the Makawahī cave. It had enormous eyes, but they just didn't work anymore because
right.
it didn't need them. It lived in a cave.
Yeah. Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
so evolution.
Yeah, fascinating. Fascinating stuff. All right. Well, we've taken up plenty of your time. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody else
You're
again, like
welcome.
I mentioned, for bearing with us with the tech issues. We figured it out. I will follow up with an email with the link to the recording. It might take me a couple of days because I'm going to I'll try to edit out, the long stretch in the
The
middle.
bad bits.
Yeah, we'll try to get that bit out. But it'll
Yeah.
probably still have a little bit of a glitch because I'm not the most perfect editor. And then I just dropped more links in the chat, for the upcoming events. The two big ones coming up will be January 30th, again with Helen, Kawai on the west side of Kauai. I'm so happy to take people out to the west side. And again, it's like that connection between and I thank you, Helen, for saying many times, what happens in the uplands affects what happens in the lowlands and our wetlands. It's an ecosystem. It works together. That is the ahupua'a concept that Hawaiians traditionally followed and practiced. So we're all connected, and on an island, we can really see that. So that's January 30th. The link to register is in the chat. And then February 11th, I invite you back here for a Zoom session with Dr. Kyle Roy, who everybody will absolutely adore and love. She is a recent PhD, uh, a young Hawaiian scientist doing some really good. I love this woman. She thinks outside the box. So she's going to be super fun. I think you'll enjoy her too. And there we have it. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great
Thanks,
rest of
Kim.
your
Thanks for
day and
hosting.
rest of your week. Yes.
Bye.
Bye.